What's up YouTube? Welcome to today's video. We've got a great topic today. We're going to be talking about a principle called the 4% rule. The 4% rule is an investment strategy that's going to help you determine how much money you need to retire and enjoy financial freedom. I'm Eric Fisk, and this is my channel, Fisk Financial, where we talk about anything and everything investing and personal finance. If you're new to the channel, welcome, glad to have you. I'm happy to have you continuing or starting your personal finance journey with me. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you know when I'm posting more content. And if you could do me a solid and hit that like button, that's going to help get this content in front of others like you that are interested. And also, I'd love to engage with you guys beyond these videos, so please feel free to leave a comment in the comment section. Quick PSA before I get into it, just because I don't know how visible this is going to be in the camera, but this gash on my nose, yeah, this is reason number 76 that you don't let your 120-pound Great Dane sleep in bed with you. I was awoken at 4 a.m. a few nights ago to a giant paw raking across my face. So that was a little unpleasant, but just wanted to address that so you guys didn't think I got jumped or something. Just the joys of living with giant dogs. Alright, so without further ado, let's get into it. The 4% rule, also known as the safe withdrawal rate, determines the maximum amount of money you can withdraw from your retirement account in order to make sure that that money lasts you your entire retirement. So the basis of this rule comes from a paper that was published in 1998 called the Trinity Study. The Trinity Study evaluated 30-year retirement periods from 1925 to 1995. The account studied had a 50-50 asset allocation, meaning 50% of the account was invested in stocks and the other 50% in bonds. The intention here was to determine what was the max percentage amount that you could withdraw from that account each year without depleting the principal over the course of a 30-year retirement period. As you may have guessed from the title of this video, the percentage amount that they determined was the safe withdrawal rate to take out of your account every year was 4%. That means that whatever amount you have in your retirement portfolio, as long as you don't take out more than 4% of that a year, that money should last you indefinitely into retirement. And actually, if we look at this graph here of the accounts studied, you can see that 4% was actually the worst case scenario. You can see in some of the years we did hit that 4% level, but most of the time it's actually higher in the 5, 6, even 7% that would be a safe withdrawal. But because we can't necessarily count on those gains every single year, we use that lowest 4% to determine what's safe for us to spend. Now the study itself looked at 30-year periods for retirement. So the assumption here being that someone retires at age 65, this money would last them to their 95th birthday, taking 4% out annually. However, we know that the stock market returns an average 7 to 8% inflation-adjusted annual return. So in theory, you could really extrapolate this out to any length of retirement that you wanted. Why this is important to you is that it gives us a really simple equation to determine how much money you're going to need and able to retire. And beyond that, you can really use this rule to calculate how much money you'd need if you want to retire early. We don't just have to look at being 65 or older. So the best way to do this is to follow this simple equation. First, you need to determine how much it is that you spend in a year. And if you have a monthly budget, this is pretty easy to do. Take whatever your monthly budget is, multiply that by 12, there's your yearly spending. You'd also want to make sure that you're taking into account here some of that fun money if you're not already doing that in your budget, so that you'd have money to go on trips or just basically enjoy life outside of just your basic necessities. Once we have that number, you simply take that amount, multiply it by 25, and that gives you the total amount of what you're going to need in your retirement accounts. That's it. So let's say your yearly expenses are $40,000. 40,000 times 25 gives us $1 million. That's the number you're going to need to hit in order to retire. Now we can also calculate this in kind of the reverse order. While I definitely recommend people have a budget and know what they're spending on a monthly or yearly basis, if you don't know that number right now, we can still take the amount that you have in your retirement accounts, let's say it's $300,000, and divide that by 25. 300,000 divided by 25 gives us $12,000. So that means with the amount that you currently have, you can safely withdraw $12,000 a year without depleting that account. Now for most people, $12,000 a year is probably not going to be enough to retire on, but at least now you have that number for reference, and you can create a goal based on that to get to whatever safe withdrawal rate you want for retirement. Now there are some other assumptions and considerations we're going to want to take into account. The first one to consider is, depending on how old you are right now, you might have 5 years until retirement, or you might have 40 years until retirement. So we know that inflation is a real thing, and if you're 40 years away from retirement and living on $40,000 a year, we can't assume that that $40,000 is going to take you as far 40, 50, 60 years into the future. So we're going to want to build in a buffer for that inflation piece. The second big consideration we want to think about is this 4% number doesn't take into account any taxes that you're going to have to pay. So unless all of your retirement savings are in a Roth IRA, you're going to have to pay at least capital gains tax on any earnings that you earned in the account when you withdraw the funds, and possibly even regular earnings taxes on the contributions if you're taking money out of tax-advantaged accounts like a 401k, where you would put in pre-tax dollars to start with. So depending on what types of retirement funds you're holding, those taxes could have a pretty big implication on your final number. In addition to those considerations, I think we need to talk about what some of the unknowns are heading into the future. Obviously, we know historically the stock market has returned that 7 to 8% inflation-adjusted return annually, but that doesn't necessarily mean we can count on that for every year moving into the future. Now, we have a lot of history and data that gives us that number, so we feel pretty confident about that, but just know that that's not a guarantee. Another unknown is that inflation rate. Just because we've seen a typical 2 to 3% inflation rate in previous years doesn't necessarily mean that's going to continue into the future. The US dollar is really a relatively young currency, and some experts think with current monetary policy and government spending, we could see even higher inflation in the future. And the last big unknown here is that people are simply living longer. So this original Trinity study, like I said, measured a 30-year retirement period. But if you retire early, or even if you just live well into your 90s or into your hundreds, there's less of a guarantee that that money's going to take you as far. But you really shouldn't let these unknowns scare you, because the retirement accounts that you use to determine what that 4% number was going to be is just what you have personally saved for retirement. It doesn't take into account if you've worked a traditional job for most of your career and expect to collect Social Security when you retire. That's obviously a whole nother chunk of money that's going to help support you and just give you an even bigger buffer on that 4% rule. Now, some financial experts today are rallying against the 4% rule and not recommending that as a stable strategy for retirement savings. And to that I say, obviously you shouldn't use one simple equation and completely rely on that for your entire retirement savings. It brings to mind a quote from Eisenhower who said, "Plans are worthless, but planning is everything." What this means is the value in prediction is not necessarily in its accuracy, but rather the reasoning and conversation that the predicting catalyzes. So of course there are a lot of other variables that come into play, and without a doubt your life is going to change in a lot of different ways before you retire. So you're going to have to be continually evaluating and changing your plan. So with that in mind, let me talk about a few ways that you can further insulate yourself in determining this final number for retirement. The first way you can start to insulate yourself here is just plan for a lifestyle that's about 20% more ambitious than you actually intend. So if you want to spend, say, $50,000 a year in retirement, just make your 4% $60,000. That way you've got a $10,000 buffer. So instead of the $1.25 million that you're realistically going to need, you're now shooting for $1.5 million to give you that buffer. The second way to insulate yourself here is simply take that 4% and reduce it to 3%. Again, this is obviously going to mean you need more money in your retirement account by the time you retire, but now you've got even more leeway where you really don't need to worry about too much volatility in the market. The third way you can help insulate yourself here is to develop other streams of passive income. Again, the 4% rule is really assuming that you're never going to earn another dollar in your life and you only got that money to rely on to spend in your retirement. For a lot of people, that's probably just not going to be the case. You might have a hobby that you intend to do in retirement that can bring in some extra side money. Or maybe you fully intend to keep working part-time in retirement to keep yourself busy and, again, bring in a little side hustle. You could also plan to have a rental property that you purchase now be part of your passive income stream in retirement. And one final way that you can plan to insulate yourself from any market volatility is you can plan to have a 5-year expenses buffer. So take 5 years of your living expenses, put that in something very low risk like a money market account, and that becomes your safety net that if the market does take a plunge in one of your years of retirement and you don't want to be taking money out of your stocks when they're down, now you've got this 5-year savings that you can withdraw from instead. Realistically, there are a lot of ways that you can safeguard yourself while still using the 4% rule. And truthfully, for a lot of people in retirement, their spending actually goes down. So if you think about it, once you retire, you don't have the expenses that you would have had with a job where you had to commute every day. So maybe that means if your household has multiple cars, you can sell some of those and reduce your expenses. Or if you worked in an office environment, you maybe were buying suits and dress clothes every year. You no longer have that expense that you need either. And the biggest expense that goes away for a lot of retirees is for home buyers. If you've been paying against a mortgage for 30 years, by the time you get to retirement, you've probably got that house pretty close to paid off. So that right there is a huge chunk of money that you're no longer going to be spending every single year. For me personally, I like to use the number that I determined using the 4% rule and pretend that's going to be my only income in retirement, while knowing full well that I'm going to probably have Social Security and other additional assets to lean on. This way I can shoot for that 4% number that in and of itself will probably last me my entire retirement, but I've also got that huge buffer in additional assets as well, so I really don't have to worry about it. So real quick guys, just in case you forgot and so you don't have to scroll back in the video, to determine your 4% number, take your annual expenses, multiply that number by 25, and that will tell you how much money you're going to need for your retirement. So that's all I got for you guys today. If you'd like to learn about other investment vehicles and how to get started on saving for retirement, I'll link my other video down here. Again, I'd love to engage with you guys down in the comments. Like it if you liked it, and until next time.